This demonstration will review a sample planning application process in Cityworks PLL. We will be completing a process that would normally require weeks or months within a short period of time. So keep in mind that we will be touching on multiple sections of PLL. However, typical end users would normally only interact with 1 to 2 pages of the module depending on their role. I'm currently on our Cityworks login page. Before I sign in, I should note that the asset management and permitting modules of Cityworks are both accessed through the same website and login. Therefore, users can be granted permissions to view, create, or complete tasks in both AMS and PLL. This makes it really easy to share information between departments. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in right now as our PLL admin account. This account is an administrator account, so I will have access to more information than the typical end user would. When I first sign in, I'm brought to the Cityworks inbox. The inbox can be thought of as an interactive dashboard displaying real-time information on current activities in Cityworks. I'm currently viewing our Welcome tab, and this tab's been configured to be a generic welcome page for our department. So we can see here we have a notification section. So this is where managers or supervisors could share important information with the department. And we're also bringing in a weather widget that we've configured for our location. The inbox does support HTML widgets, so it is possible to bring in other features as well, such as live traffic data. Along the top of our inbox, you'll notice we have a lot of tabs available to us. So as I mentioned, I'm currently signed in as my administrator user, so I can see all of our organization's tabs. And the inbox is a great way to share information between departments because tabs can be shared across all users, or users could also have tabs that are configured to their specific role. So they could have a tab configured to show all of their tasks for that day. So right now I'm just going to go and take a quick look at our bylaw. This demonstration site is actually using service requests to handle bylaw and code enforcement calls. So service requests are a great tool to capture any incoming call type because we can configure a standard set of questions and answers to help the call taker gather the proper information. And the nice thing about having AMS and PLL on the same website is that we can then link those activities together. So for example, if any of our service requests resulted in an activity being submitted to PLL, we could link that service request to the application in PLL to track the full incident history. Okay, so next I'm going to look at our building permits tab. So from this tab, we can see some quick information about current activities in the building department. So along the top here, we have our residential permit applications that have been submitted within the last 10 days. And I should note that each line here in this table represents an individual application. So right here, we can already see some basic information regarding the application. And when we set up the inbox, we can configure different fields to be displayed. So it is really customizable and users have full control over the information that they see. And I should also note here that we have a hyperlink where that would take me directly to the actual application itself to view more information. And below that, we have our new online applications. So these are applications that have been submitted through our public access portal. And the public access portal is a feature of Cityworks that allows members of the public to actually sign in and submit new applications online. They can also sign in and monitor and track the status of any current applications. And then below that, we have our building permits that are in review. So we can quickly see all of our building permits that are currently going through the review process. And then we also have our building permits that have been issued. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at some of the other activities in departments, I'm going to open up our severance tab. And our severance tab here displays some key information about current activities within our planning department. So we have our severances here. We can first of all see all of our severance applications. And then we also have our severances broken down by types. We have agricultural and residential, and then we've also sorted them by status. So we have our granted and deferred severance applications. So right now I'm going to go through the process of actually creating a new severance application. So to do that, I'm going to open up our Cityworks map. The Cityworks map is pulling live GIS data from your organization's GIS server. So this information is dynamic, if there's an update made on the GIS, the map will pull that in automatically upon refreshing. Another thing to note about the Cityworks map is it does use HTML5, so it is functional on any mobile device. So I could sign in on my phone or my iPad, and I could view the same map without any issues. And I should also note that when we first logged in, I was brought to the full extent of the map. However, it is possible to set a unique initial extent for each user. So for example, if you are working at an upper tier municipality and you have planners that are assigned to specific lower tier municipalities, their map could open and zoom to their work area, and so that right away they can see information that's relevant to them. So I'm just going to zoom in on my map here, and we'll notice that additional layers start to become visible. So I now have some parcels that are visible, and we also have some hydrology features that are coming through and rail lines. So the Cityworks map does respect visibility settings set at your map service level. And we also have a few icons here on our map. So if I click on one of these icons, I can actually see that this represents a current severance application. And we can see some basic information about that application directly from the map. So this layer is actually called an event layer, and event layers are configured in Cityworks to show the locations of current activities on the map. So we could have all of our planning department activities, or each planner could have an event layer configured showing their current activities, and you could also adjust the symbology to show status. So we could have all of our in review, all of our granted severances, all displayed on the map so it's easy for a planner to monitor. And it's also a great way to share information between departments. So we could have event layers that we could turn on and off for building or code enforcement, so we can get a quick idea of what's going on surrounding our property of interest. So now if I zoom in even closer, we can see here that we have some planning related layers that are coming in now. So now we currently have our addresses, parcels, and building footprints. So if I open up my legend here, you can see that we have our planning related parcels here, and we have the option here to set visibility, and then this little check mark here means that I can select those features and interact with them. So I'll be doing that in just a minute, but before I get into that, I should mention too that the map can be configured per user group. So user group A could have a different map than user group B. So that means that planners could sign in and see all of their planning related layers, while the building department could sign in and see all of the layers that are relevant to their processes. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are going to start a new severance application. So the first thing that I'm going to do is use my locate tool to look up my address. So I'll say we are at 1700 Glendale. And when I launch this tool, it's actually launching my organization's geocoding service. So this geocoder could be customized. Organizations do have the option to bring in their own local geocoding service. It does support composite locators as well. And so we can see here that we have found my parcel of interest. And so Cityworks zoomed to it and put a little dot on it for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and select it. And when I select this parcel, now I can see all of my parcel attributes. So across the bottom here, we have information such as parcel ID or rule number. I should also note that our parcel GIS data has been configured with some ownership data. So for example, if you have GIS data configured with assessment or ownership coming from MPAC, we can bring that in. And as I mentioned earlier, this data is real time. So if there is any updates that have been made to the GIS, so if you have an update on ownership data, as soon as you make that change in the GIS, it's automatically pushed to Cityworks. So there's no extra step needed to sync the two. And while I have my parcel selected, I also have a little tool up here called Asset History. From here, I can see a complete history of any other previous Cityworks activity that was associated to this parcel. So right now, I do have a result that was returned for cases. So PLL activities are actually called cases in this system. So this could be anything from a general inquiry, as we can see here, to a building permit. And depending how we also have code enforcement or bylaw set up, those could potentially show up as cases, or if we're tracking them through service requests, they would show up under this tab here. So right now I can see that we have a previous general inquiry that was submitted for this property. So if I wanted to see more information on this inquiry, I can select our ID. And this will bring me directly to the file. So right now I can see that this inquiry was regarding a request for land use and zoning information on this parcel, and it's currently closed. If I wanted to see any more details, I could go through the case in closer detail, but we are going to discuss this shortly. So for now, I'm just going to return back to our map, and my parcel is still selected, so I'm going to now start the process to create a new application. So I'm back on my main Cityworks tab, and I can select the option here for New Application. And I will now use our lookup to look for our severance type. So right now I should note that I do have access to all of our templates configured in PLL because I am signed in as the administrator. But typically a planning department would have some security set up so that only members of that department have access to create new planning applications. So this list would be much shorter. Okay, so I'm going to pick my severance, and I will pick residential as my subtype, and I will create the case. When I first create the application, I'm brought to the summary page. The summary page provides us with an overview of the complete application. So as you can see right here, we can see our type and subtype. So we have our severance, and we also have a file number that's been auto-generated for this application. And we do have complete control over the structure of this file number. So we could change the prefix, the date format, or the number of digits that are supported. And we also have our status. So over here, we can see that our status is currently set to initial. So as I work through the workflow, this status is going to automatically update depending on the results of my tasks. The summary page also displays a number of panels. So I'm just going to collapse everything. But you may notice here that all of these panels also correspond to the tabs that we have available across the top. So the summary page just acts as a general overview dashboard for the application. If we want to drill down to finer details, we could go directly to the tab and see more information. So for now, we're going to take a look at our main tab, and this shows us some basic information about the application, such as type. So we can see here we have our severance and our residential. For now, it's assigned to my current user. I did have an option on the previous page to assign the application at intake. However, I didn't populate it, so it defaulted to my own user. But we will come back and edit this throughout the workflow. So next, I'm just going to expand my address and people. We notice that both of these panels are currently empty. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and add my address. Okay, and if I select my little globe icon here, it's actually going to bring in the parcel information from the map. So this is where Cityworks is creating the link between our application and the actual parcel asset. So right now we have some attributes that are actually coming in directly from our GIS attributes. So we've configured Cityworks to recognize our roll number field and populate our roll number. We also have our location that's coming in with our full address. And we've included some additional attribute fields down here as well. So this can be set up based on the fields that are available in your GIS data. So for example, if we would want to repurpose our lot field here to be unit, we could redirect this to the unit attribute field and relabel this field to be unit instead of lot. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Okay. If I come back to my map now and clear my selection, and I'm just going to pan away from that parcel. Okay, so we do have a little option here that's called Highlight on Map. So if I click this button and then come back to my Cityworks map, we can see now we're recentered on that initial parcel where our severance was associated to. So Cityworks is actually creating a link between the application and the object ID of that parcel. So now when I come back in here, I also have the option to edit my address information. So when we attach the parcel to the application, we created a copy of the attributes. So the attributes are not actually a live link back to the GIS parcel itself. So all this information can be edited once attached if needed. And any edits that we make in here are going to stay strictly on this case file. They won't be passed back to the GIS or impact our GIS data in any way. Next, I'm going to open up my People tab. So we saw on the summary page before that our people table was actually empty, and now we can see that we have a property owner that's been populated. So when I associated my application to my parcel, we've actually configured Cityworks to go and look for any attribute data corresponding to our property owner information. So if I open this up, we can actually see here that we've brought in the full name, we have our address and our city, as well as postal code coming through for this particular property owner. So all of these fields are being pulled from the GIS. And once again, this is not a live link to the GIS attributes. So for example, if you received an application and the property has since been sold and your GIS has not been updated, you can actually come in here and manually correct this information so that the information associated to the application is accurate. And once again, that does not impact your GIS data. And right now we only have it configured to pull in a single property owner because that's all we have available in our GIS. But if you did have multiple property owners available in the GIS, we could account for that and bring that information in as well. Okay, so I'm going to select our option up here to add a new person to the case. So the first field that I have here is called roll code. So if I open up my lookup window here, I can see that we have a number of different roll codes configured in PLL. So roll codes help us to classify people related to a application and sort them based on their responsibility. So for example, here we do have some roll codes configured for agency, agent, or applicant. So these are all configured by the organization. They have full control over what's available here in this list and how they want to sort people. And the great thing about roll codes is that they help us to report on who's involved in what application, what they're responsible for, as well as to configure automatic email notifications. So we can have email notifications that go to our applicant. We can have email notifications that are directed to agencies during circulation. So it provides us with a lot of flexibility. So right now I'm just going to pick my applicant roll code. And now we have a lookup for our full name or company name. So I could manually populate this, but Cityworks is also configured with a PLL people table. So this table stores common contact information for people who may commonly be associated with cases. So for example, if you have regular contacts at an agency such as a conservation authority, you can save all of their contact information into the system. So then when you need to associate them to a new file, we just have to use our lookup and it will automatically bring all of their contact information in. So you don't have to add it from scratch each time. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to pick our general contractors. We'll say that that's our applicant. Because I do have my email address configured here, so we are going to receive some automatic notifications. Next, I'm going to take a look at our Details tab. This tab here provides administrators with the ability to create custom fields to track additional information regarding the application. So as you can see here, we have some fields that have been configured to capture details regarding the severance. So we have our land intended to be severed. We also have land intended to be retained. And then we have two groups down here for severance details and severance notice contents. So if I come back up here to the top and select the option to edit, you can see here that we've configured a number of different field types. So for frontage, width, area, and depth, I've actually configured these to be numeric. So if I enter text here, I will receive a warning. I'm just going to clear that for now. However, our existing use is a text field. We also have access to custom dropdowns. So you can configure dropdowns containing any information or any standard results that you would like. So our next case data group is our land intended to be retained. So once again, we have some numeric text fields and dropdowns. Down here under severance details, we have more drop-downs for agricultural operation within 500 meters. I'm going to say no. Is there a landfill within 500 meters? I'll say no. I'm just going to populate a few of these other ones. Now it is also possible to run an automatic intersect. So depending on what GIS information you have available to you. So if you have a buffer zone for provincially significant wetlands, we could potentially add that to the GIS configuration, and PLL could automatically go and look and see if our parcel of interest intersects these wetlands and report back to us. Okay, so next we have our severance notice contents. So we've configured comment fields in this section which support up to 2,000 characters. So in here you could actually put any details in, any information that needs to actually be displayed in a notice, and we can pull this information out in a Crystal Report template. So any of the fields that we just looked at can be pulled out for reporting. So this is a great panel to capture that information that we need to include in any monthly reports, for example. Okay, so I'm just going to save this panel. And before we move to our next panel, I should also note that case data groups can be configured to be linked to fees. For example, if you have a subdivision application, you could have a case data field that's tracking the number of lots in the subdivision, and that number of lots can be linked to the fee and used to calculate the fee amount. So with that being said, I'm just going to open up our fee tab. So on this tab here, we can see that we had a default fee that was added to this application type. So the great thing about case templates in PLL is we can configure them with a set of default items, such as fees, case data fields, and workflow tasks. So this helps increase the efficiency of the intake process. So each time you create a new application, you don't have to start from scratch. You're giving some starting points, and just because those defaults are added doesn't mean that we can't change them. So for example, for this specific fee here, I do have the option to waive the fee. I could remove the fee entirely, or I can add a new fee. So if I select this option to add a new fee, I can use our lookup tool here, and I can see that we have a number of fees configured in the system. So PLL administrators can actually go ahead and configure an entire fee schedule in PLL. And what's also great about the fees in PLL is they do have an effective by date assigned to them. So that means if you know your fee schedule is updating on January 1st, you can go in ahead of time and add those increased fee rates. So then when January 1st rolls around, PLL will automatically recognize the increase, and any application submitted on or after January 1st would have the new fee values added to it. Next, I'm going to process this fee. So we do have a little make payment icon down here. So when I click on this, our payment tab opens, and I can select the option to pay now. So this process is just documenting a payment in PLL. We aren't actually processing the payment. However, there are opportunities to integrate PLL with systems such as PayPal or Authorize.net, and that can be linked into the public access portal as well. So if users are signed into the portal, they can pay their fees online. There's also opportunities to integrate with existing financial systems through the Cityworks API. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say that our payment was received by check. And I have the option down here to document who came in and who submitted the payment. And so right now it's actually pulling in the people that we configured on the People tab to automatically populate some of that contact information. So once again, you don't have to enter everything from scratch. And I will save that. So that will bring us back to our Fees tab on our application. And we can see here that our fees have now been paid in full. Depending on how an organization configures their environment, it is possible to automatically generate an invoice when a payment is tracked through PLL, and that invoice could be generated from a Crystal Report template, so the organization does have full control over what information is captured on that invoice. Next, I'm going to open up our Related Documents tab. So PLL does allow users to attach documents directly to the application. So I can use this option here to add an attachment, and I can add my consent survey. So that file is now saved on this specific application here. So Cityworks can handle file types of any kind through the Office mode, and it provides users with the ability to store and organize files related to work activities. It's a great way also to share documents across a department when people are viewing those files. However, it's not a true document management system, so it doesn't track editing. There is potential to integrate with systems such as OnBase, which would provide planners with the ability to complete an electronic plans review and link all of their files directly to their PLL application. Before we get to the workflow, I want to take a quick look at our Conditions tab. On this tab here, we can see that there was a default condition that was applied to the severance. So this is a condition that would apply to all of our severance applications that get generated. Once again, I do have the option here to remove it, or I could add additional conditions anytime throughout the lifespan of this application. So if I open this up to view it, we can see here there's some additional details that have been assigned by default, and all this information can be pulled out for any notices or reports. We also have the option to mark conditions as complete. So when conditions are met in the application, we can come in here and mark them off, and it does timestamp the date and time as to when that condition was met. And we can also build some logic into the workflow, so we could prevent the application from moving past a specific point until all the conditions associated to the file are complete. So next I'm going to go take a look at our workflow, and the workflow is really the core of Cityworks PLL. Workflows contain a series of tasks that occur in a predefined order. So right now I'm looking at our severance workflow. So we can see here that the only task that is available to us is our initial intake. So we can't proceed to any other tasks until this task is marked as done. So if I open up my result options here, I have an option here for intake. So we did do an initial review of the application, so I can mark this off now. And once that's complete, we can see now we have our second task available to us. So the workflow that I'm using right now is a very simple demonstration workflow. So keep in mind that Cityworks administrators have complete control over the workflow configuration. So this means that each organization can configure PLL workflows based on their unique business processes and tasks. The workflow that we are going through today may not apply directly to your business process, but as part of PLL implementations, we will work with an organization to map out their business processes, identify opportunities to increase efficiency, and migrate all of this into PLL workflows. So now our next task that we have available is our application deemed complete. So if I take a look at our results, I now have two different options. I have complete or incomplete. And we also see here that we have a little yellow checklist icon. So if I open up my checklist, we have a list of items that are required in order to deem our application as complete. Checklists are great tools to document the sub-steps of a task or to act as a simple reminder to staff. So right now I'm just going to go ahead and close this without actually selecting anything. And so if I try and mark my application as incomplete now, I receive a warning. So we've built logic into this checklist that requires the user to go in and set an answer for each of these line items before they can move on. This is optional configuration. I will open this back up, and I'm going to say that our copy of current deed is missing, names of neighbors are missing, but we do have our sketch. So now I can close our checklist and set our result to be incomplete. So now you'll notice that Cityworks automatically reinserted that same task. So I can't move forward until we have a successful outcome for this task. So this is additional logic that we've built into the task configuration and the workflow itself. As I mentioned when we were associating pupil to the case, we have the ability to trigger automatic email notifications based on task outcomes. So right now we can see up here in my Gmail account, I have a new email. So if I come in here and open this up, I can see that we have a notice of severance application deficiencies. So this notification is actually configured with an attached Crystal Report PDF. And so keep in mind, any of the Crystal reports that we view today are just sample templates that we've configured. Crystal Reports is a really powerful reporting tool and allows you to customize the templates to meet your needs. So any notice or any report or anything that is generated from Cityworks can be generated on your standard organization's letterhead. Okay, so on this specific notice here, we can see our applicant information is being populated on the top. We have our severance file number coming through, and we also have our list of missing items. So this template is actually configured to go and check our checklist and see if we reported any items as being missing, and it's listing them below. So we also have the option in the checklist to add additional comments. So if we wanted to comment on any of the missing items, we could have, and then we could have configured our template to include a comment field as well to provide the applicant with more information. And lastly, we've set up our template using electronic signatures. So we have a table in the backend that is checking to see what user marked the task as being incomplete and pulling in their user ID to go then look for their associated signature. Once again, this is just an optional feature that can be configured through the template itself. Okay, so now that the applicant has been notified of the missing items, we can say that they've come in and provided us with an update. So I will come back to our task here and open up our second checklist. So our checklist is remembering the results of the first time around. So I can now say that we have our current deed and we have the names of neighbors. So I can close this and mark this as complete. I'm just going to refresh our page here. So since I deemed the application complete, we triggered a status update. So before our status was set to initial and it's now been changed to review. And our next task that we have available is our assign file to planner. So I'm going to come back to our main tab here. And I'm going to select edit. And I'll use my lookup tool to pull up our employee list. Okay, so I'm going to assign this to Planner 1. So similar to how we sent the notification to the applicant, we could also potentially have a notification set up that would be sent to the planner now, telling them that they do have a new application that's been assigned to them in Cityworks, and it can include a direct link to that application so they could then sign in and review the details. So I will save this and come back to our workflow. Okay, so now we can mark this off as assigned. Okay, so I'm just going to refresh again. And once again, our status is updated. So we are now in review and circulation. So if we look at our workflow now, we have two tasks that are available to us. So this is called a milestone in PLL. So this provides some flexibility to the end user. So I can go ahead and complete our send letter task, and then our prepare circulation package. So tasks and a milestone can be completed in any order, but both tasks must be completed before you can move on. So now that when I check off the prepared, we can see that our site visit by planner is now available. So before I complete my site visit, I'm going to come back to our summary page. On our main panel here, there's a few things that have been updated since we were last on the summary page. So since I associated the application to a parcel and a location, that automatic intersect tool that I referenced earlier was triggered. So we have that intersect set up to go look for our planning sub-area value, as well as our zoning and current land use. And we also have a new child case that was created for the agency circulation. So PLL allows you to link applications to each other using a parent-child relationship. So the parent would be the main application, and then the child would be any application or file that was generated as a result of the parent. So this is a really handy functionality for tracking concurrent applications. This is also a great way to track sub-workflows in greater detail. So I'm going to go ahead and open up our agency circulation. As you can see, this is a very simple file configuration. We only have our summary, workflow, and main tabs available to us. So for each case template in PLL, we can configure the template with only those tabs that are relevant to the application type. So right now, if I look at our main panel here, we can now see that we are looking at our agency circulation. Our address is automatically passed through, and we also have a link directly back to our parent severance here. So we can see here the little P indicates that this is our parent application. Within our workflow, we have a task configured for each agency. This lets us document details of each notice or response. So I can click our little comment icon here, and this is functionality available to every single task. And from this window, I can add a comment. So I can document details of the response through here. So I'll just say add a new comment here. And I can save it, and that comment is stamped with the user who added it, as well as the date and time. So now when I close, Our icon does refresh to have a little star right here. This informs other users that a comment has been added to the file, and it's a great way to communicate between other members in the department. So we also have the option of adding attachments directly to tasks in PLL. So if I open up my task to edit, I have the option here to add an attachment. So I can come in here and I can actually add an email message. So I can say I received email correspondence with the agency regarding the application. I can then export that email from Outlook into a message file, and I can attach this directly to our application. So now when I come up here to our workflow, we actually have a little attachment icon next to the task. So once again, it's an indication to other users that a file has been attached to the specific task, and they can come in here, open up the message, and see the full email correspondence. So for now, I'm just going to go through and mark off all of our agencies as responded. Okay, and I can now close out our commenting period. So if I come back to our summary tab, I can now use a hyperlink to go directly back to our parent and finish off our parent workflow. Okay, so our parent now has been updated, so we can see our agency circulation is closed. And if I come down to the workflow, our next task is our site visit by planner. So I'm actually going to sign out and log in as our planner. So as I mentioned earlier, each user can have a unique inbox configuration. So as you can see right now, as I'm signed in as Planner 1, I have a very simple inbox. So I only have 3 tabs available to me. So I have my Welcome tab. This is the tab that's shared across the department. I also have our Development Services dashboard. So this tab here gives me an overview of current activities within the Development Services department. And then I have a tab configured for my applications. So I've set up this inbox to display only those severances that have been assigned to me, as well as to show my upcoming site visits. So I have filters set in the background to pull in this specific information. I also have my site visits displaying on the map. So if I zoom out here, I can see the location of my 2 site visits. So if I'm looking at my inbox and I know I'm going out in the field that day, I can quickly see if there's any other site visits in that area and plan my route. Okay, so on our upcoming site visits panel here, I can see our severance for our 1700 Glendale Drive. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this application. So now we have a few options. We could go out in the field to complete our site visit and then add our notes back to Cityworks once we return to the office, or we could go out in the field and use our Cityworks mobile application to document all of our field notes and attachments directly from the site. So for this demo, I'm going to switch over to my iPad now and sign into the Cityworks native app. Okay, so I'm just going to sign in now as Planner 1. So when I first sign in, the app is syncing all of my data. Now the great thing about the Cityworks native app is I can work offline. So if a planner is visiting a site in a remote area, they're able to document all of their notes and their attachments while they're on site, and then they can sync all of that information back to Cityworks once they have a secure connection again. I'm just going to turn off our addresses and make our map a little bit cleaner. Okay, so if I zoom out, you'll notice that this is the same map that we had access to in the office. So I can click on our site inspection activity from the map, and I could open it up directly from the map, or I can come into our inbox, and we can see here our severance file. So we currently have 2 different site visits available to us. So I'm going to pick our severance 2019-024. And when I open this up, I can see some basic information regarding this specific task at the top. I also have my address. So if I click on the address, the native app actually passes that information through to my GPS application, so I can automatically get directions to the site visit. So if I come back here, the next thing that we have is our checklist. Now, we don't have any checklist configured for our site visit, but if the task did have an associated checklist, you could complete all of the checklist line items directly from the app. And I will come back to our results. We can use comments to document our field notes. Since I am using my iPad, I can use the voice to text feature to quickly document my field observations. Field notes go here, and I can add that to the task. So now when I come back, our next option is for inspection request. So this is if the task was set up for, say, a building inspection. We could have some additional details regarding that request displayed here for the inspector. So I'm going to skip over that and go to our attachments. So the attachments panel here shows any attachment that is associated to the application in Cityworks. So I can click on our consent survey and open this up so I can view this survey directly from the field. The native app also has a functionality here to export this, so I could export this for redlining or marking up in a separate application, save the file, and reattach it directly through the mobile application. I also have the option here to add a picture. So I can take a picture while I'm in the field and add this directly to my site visit task. So now that I've done all my site visit work, I'm going to go ahead and check this off as being done. And if I come back to my inbox, I can sync these changes back to the office. And I will switch back over to our office mode now and refresh our page. So we can now see that our site visit by planner has been marked off as done. We have an attachment and we have a comment. So if I click on my comment here, I can see the notes that I added in the field. And if I open up this task, I can also see that picture that I added while I was on site. I'm going to come back up to our workflow and just mark off the next few tasks as being done. And I'll say our outcome is granted. Okay, so once again here for the send decision to applicant task, we could trigger an automatic email notification that could pull any of the information attached to any of the previous tasks and include a summary of their severance application, as well as the decision details. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark this as done. So our next task now is our appeal received. So we have two options. We have our appeal outcome or our no appeal outcome. So if I go with a no appeal outcome, we'd continue with the workflow as is. So that would move us to our conditions fulfilled task. However, we've built additional logic into the appeal. So if I select the appeal option, we have a new task that is inserted. So now we have a task for appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board. In this demo site, we've configured a very simple appeal process. However, the great thing about the PLL workflows is they can be as simple or as complex as you desire. So depending on the level of detail that an organization may want to track about the appeal process, we could have configured the workflow to insert an entire appeal branch with a series of tasks. We also have the potential to loop back up to any earlier task in our initial workflow and repeat the entire process again. For now, I'm just going to mark the next few tasks as done. And at this point here, we have our conditions fulfilled. So we could build logic in if we desired to prevent the user from marking conditions as being fulfilled until all the conditions on our condition tab are complete. For now, I'm just going to continue. And we will say our consent certificate has been issued. And we will mark our application as registered. So now if I come back to my summary page, we can see that the final status has been set to registered. Now that our application is complete, I'm going to touch on a few ways that we can use our application data for reports or for quick searches. So on our main tab here, we actually have a circulation print template that's been configured. So if I select this dropdown, we also have a severance summary. So these templates are configured in Crystal Reports as well, and you can associate as many templates to an application as desired. So for now, I'm going to stick with our circulation list and hit the print. So this specific template is actually pulling the results from our agency circulation. So it's looking at our main parent application for the severance and pulling in some address data as well as our roll number. And then we have our property owner and our applicant information coming from our People tab. And then the last section here is actually looking at our child case for the agency circulation, and it's pulling in the response from each agency as well as any comments regarding their response. So this is just one example of a sample print template that could be generated directly from an application. For the next example, I'm actually going to switch and log in as PLL admin. Under New Application, I also have the option for a general search. We have multiple options for searching applications in PLL. For example, we have our General tab here that searches by application type, subtype. We could search directly by our file number. We could search to see who the application is assigned to. So all of these parameters are actually the same parameters that we set up for our inbox search configurations. So for example, down here, we have our status. So previously we saw our severances being displayed by status. We can also search by task information, payment details, violation, people, conditions, and then we also have contractor and GIS information available to us. So the one question I've gotten from planning departments in the past is how can they easily search for the history of a location or perhaps a caller? So one of those options here is our location field. So if I know an address, I can put the address in. So I will use the same address we've been working with and perform the search. And this will return any application in PLL that was generated for the specific address. So in here we can see that general inquiry that we previously saw when we looked up our asset history from the map. So there are multiple ways to look up that history. And the map is just one of them. And now we can also see our severance and agency circulation that we created since being on the map. Now we have a few options across the top here. So I can select data and export, and I'll say all pages. Okay, and we can see our result down here. So if I go ahead and open up this Excel file, we now have a quick Excel document with the full history of this specific parcel or address. Okay, so I'm just going to close that and come back to my search. And I'm just going to clear my parameters. Depending on how information is being tracked in your PLL configuration, there's also the option to search directly from this general panel using roll number. So a lot of organizations use the tag field to track the roll number. So I'm just going to search my sample roll number right now. Okay, and we can see here that we have a general inquiry that has been associated to this specific parcel. And that was all brought back based on the roll number. So there are different options that we can configure for searching and tracking location data in PLL. So now let's take a look at how we can search for caller history. So once again, I'm just going to clear my search parameters. And this time I'm going to open up my People tab. And let's say I have John Smith who's calling in about an inquiry. I can pick my roll code here for inquirer. And now I can search to see all of the previous inquiries that were filed by John Smith. So we can see here that John's previously filed 3 inquiries for 3 different property locations, and I can select the option here to view these on the map. Okay, so each of these inquiries are now represented by a briefcase, so I can see their location. I'm just going to come back to our grid view. And I should note that we can also add any additional fields to our search result. So back on my search panel here, so I can make the search as complex or as simple as desired. And this is also a great way to run some quick summary reports, and we can then export that data directly to Excel as we just saw. So before I wrap up the demo, there's one more way that we can search from our inbox that I want to touch on. So the PLL admin account is configured with access to the Planning Inquiries tab. So I've configured this tab just with a basic search showing all of our general inquiry cases. Without even opening up the full search page, call takers could quickly search in here by name. So here we see those 3 results for John Smith again, or we could potentially search by address. So I can start typing in address on Kelly Ave, and you can see here that these search parameters search all the fields that are returned on our inbox panel. And I can quickly see that this inquiry is still open. And if I wanted to view more information, I could open the inquiry directly from here. So this is a really easy way for call takers to quickly look up the history of callers or locations. And that concludes today's demo.